Well, this is the Community Preservation Committee meeting. And it is also, in addition to our regular business meeting, the annual public hearing, although all of our meetings are public. It's the annual hearing where the public are invited to weigh in on their thoughts, their questions, their comments about how the CPC is working in Newburyport, and also their opinions on what needs or possibilities for improvements in the areas that the Community Preservation Fund can fund in the city that have not been addressed or that should be addressed. The areas that are eligible for this fund are the acquisition and preservation of open space, historic resources, affordable housing, that's including the support of affordable housing, and recreational resources. With that said, we generally withhold our regular business and put at the beginning of the meeting the opportunity for any of you who are attending remotely by phone or by Zoom to raise whatever questions or ideas you bring with you, and we will discuss them and answer your questions to the best of our ability. And if we can't answer them, we'll get you some answers. So if there's anyone out there at this time that has something to say or a question to ask, I invite you to raise your hand now, and we can recognize you and get along with our public hearing for this year.
I'm not seeing one with raised hands at this time, Chair.
No raised hands. So we will continue on our agenda with our regular business. But first, I'd also like to open up to the committee the possibility that if you have at any time questions about how we operate, how we should operate, or types of projects that you'd like to see, please feel free to not put on your citizen hat, resident of the city, and weigh in as well. So if you'd like to do that now, let me know. Raise your hand. Everybody's on to business. That's good. Here we go. Okay, the next item of business is the amended application for the renovation of the Knock Middle School tennis courts. The revision of the application comes about, as you see in your staff report, item number 2. As a result of discussions at the committee level and the full council level at City Council, as they were reviewing our recommendations, they stumbled on the concept that the applicant here was a co-application by a nonprofit, Friends of Newburyport Tennis, and the Parks Department, combined with the fact that the land which the tennis court sits on is controlled by the school department. So the discussion focused on, can they appropriate for improvements to land that the owner hasn't asked for. The discussion went with the contribution from the applicant as well as Andy and myself, that this was during the committee's own review of the application. We heard from the applicants that the school department was fully on board and would help manage the scheduling for the new facility as well. And that was confirmed. However, the council chose to table this application until they got more comfort with the way the application was set up and who the applicants were. As a result, to clarify things, the application has been revised where the applicants are now identified as co-applicants, the school department and the parks department. And a clarification that there will be assistance from the school department in the management and scheduling of the new facility, so that the parks department doesn't take on unnecessary extra obligations. So that's the history of that. Anybody got any questions about how this arose and what we need to do about it? Okay, I think that the appropriate way to proceed is to have the revised application in front of us by motion and do another vote on recommending the revised application for approval in the amount requested. So I will, if there's no further question about how we proceed, I will entertain a motion to that effect. Looks like Paul Healy's going to weigh in and give me a motion.
Yeah, I'll make a motion that we put this revised application in front of us and then a motion to accept it.
I'll make a motion. I make a motion to second. This is Chuck Griffin.
Paul, to clarify, to accept it, you mean to recommend it to City Council?
Right. Oh, yes, I'm sorry, yes.
Okay, good. Any discussion? Hearing none, we'll take a roll call vote. I'm assuming what I see on my screen are all those that are present, so I'm just going to run down these names. And if I miss somebody, please let Caitlin know on this roll call so that I can, include you as well. So the motion has been made and seconded. All those in favor, Paul Healy.
Yes. Yes.
Don Little.
Yes.
Don Waters.
Yes.
Jane Healy.
Yes.
Chuck Griffin.
Yes.
Glenn Richards.
Yes.
No one else out there. Okay, that's good. So that's what we will do. Next item on the agenda, number 3, is the another adjustment to the package of recommendations that we sent to City Council, and that's the Fuller Field track renovation Phase 2 bond payment number 1. The reason that this is here is that the bond was put out on the street subsequent to our getting our docket completed and sent off to City Council, so that there needs to be a formal recommendation to City Council to add this bond payment to the bond payments that they've already approved, so that they can be made in a timely manner in this upcoming fiscal year. I confirmed with the treasurer that the additional spending of the $48,464 does not put us in the red with currently available funds, and that in fact we have a cushion. It's a reduced cushion, but it's down to roughly $5,000 now. So, and that's obviously not counting the money that continues to flow into the fund as taxes are paid. So what I would propose we do with this one is recommend that we update and revise our recommendation as to payments to outstanding bonds to include this new bond for Fuller Field track renovation, and recommend that to City Council for payment with the current bond payments that have already been approved. Okay, I'll entertain a motion to that effect.
So moved.
And a second.
It's Don Walters, I'll second.
Thanks, Don. Okay, any discussion? Hearing none, we'll do roll call. Paul Healy,
Yes.
Don Little,
Yes.
Don Walters,
Yes.
Jane Healy,
Yes.
Chuck Griffin,
yes,
Glenn Richards.
Yes.
Okay, chair votes yes, and in case I didn't say it beforehand, I voted yes on the last one too. Okay, moving on to number 4. Do we have with us, Caitlin, someone from Parks Department and Commission for updates?
Yes, we have Lise Reed present, Parks Director.
Lise, let me give you the floor and you can tell us what updates you have, and then we'll field any questions the committee might have.
Okay, happy to. Good evening, committee members. So the Fuller Field project phase 2 is now substantially complete as of September 30th. We have a punch list of items that will be completed by October 31st. And the field house, the old field house, is being renovated under a separate, it's being renovated in-house. We're contracting out and acting as GC, and we will be doing that over the winter to finish. We've put the roof on, and we are now working on masonry repairs and renovating the restroom facility. In terms of the Bartlett Mall, we have just completed contracts with a team of consultants who have given us basically some options for cleaning up the pond and a recommendation for management after cleanup. And our next steps now will be we're awaiting some proposals for design engineering and further design development of the actual work so that we can put the project out to bid and get to work on the actual construction of those alternatives. So I know that funding we had 10,000 that was approved a couple of years ago by CPC. That money is almost all spent. It was first spent on, we spent about, I think it was $652 on an initial consultant who reviewed all the documentation that we had in-house, reports from over the years about water quality studies and the fountain, and she gave us her recommendations for a path forward. After that, we contracted with these 2 most recent consultants, Aqueous and GEI consultants, who are also working on the pond in the center of Boston, where the swan boats are, frog pond there. And so they've given us their report, and we are waiting proposals from them. So that's where we stand. So I'm here to answer any questions.
Thank you. Any questions? Anybody on the committee?
I'm happy to start off, Mike, if that's okay. This is Don Walters. Good evening, Lisa.
I don't.
My question revolves around a piece of correspondence, and I'm paraphrasing, so please correct me as necessary, that the restoration work of the fountain will be placed on hold until a more detailed water analysis and or water cleanup in the pond would be accomplished. And my inference is that if at least, and I don't know, I can't recall whether with the fountain restoration, whether that restoration was basically the exterior or also the interior of the fountain, including any pumps, piping, et cetera, which could be impacted to any of the wetted surfaces of the fluid in the pond. So that was my question, and I believe one or two other committee members may have had a similar question. I was hoping you could provide a bit more flavor on that. Thank you.
Sure. The restoration of the fountain itself, the timing on that, it will have to come out at some point prior to the construction of the pond improvements and cleanup. So the timing, we could take it out at any point and send it off to a restoration company to be restored, and then either place it back in the pond if the pond is ready to receive it, or put it or store it off-site somewhere. Those are options that we are still haven't decided. We'll discuss those with whoever ends up being our design engineer architect for the project. And the restoration funding that we have asked for from the CPC is for the exterior of the fountain. It is not for the plumbing. The plumbing will be handled separately. It's in the grand scheme of things, the plumbing should be a lot less costly than the exterior restoration that we're talking about. Before this all, several years ago, we were working with actually a volunteer fountain company who had gone in and was replacing all the plumbing inside for free for us. When the hatch that allowed us to enter the fountain became submerged and has not reemerged since. So that put a stop to that work. So at this point, we will not be working on the interior of the fountain until the fountain itself is removed.
Thank you. Perhaps a follow-on question, if I may. You mentioned pond cleanup. I'm not sure exactly what that means. Does that mean cleaning or correcting the water quality in the pond, or does it pond cleanup mean something else?
Well, the ultimate result is a clean water body. And we're not talking about swimming pool clean. We're talking about clean enough to support wildlife and that it won't be a danger to people and animals coming in contact with it. So what the last consultants that we hired have given us some alternatives, and we still have to choose which alternative we're going to use, whether it be some kind of dredging, hydrologic dredging perhaps, or with disposal offsite or on-site, whether it be capping the bottom of the pond, whether it be a chemical treatment of the pond. There are several different alternatives, and we may use a combination of those alternatives, and that's yet to be determined. We have yet to do some research with, again, a further design engineering services.
Okay, thank you. And my last question or comment. So if under a hypothetical that the pond cleanup is exorbitant, too expensive, and we just can't secure funds, state, federally, CPC, et cetera, can the fountains, would the fountain still work? You do the modification, you restore it as you said. Can you then still operate the fountain with the water in the pond that's currently there? Under the hypothetical, we cannot clean up the water because it's too expensive.
Okay, in my professional opinion, yes, we restore the fountain, we replace the plumbing. I believe that we could bring it to a functional point without without a lot more cost than we have asked for. Of course, the plumbing would be extra on top of what we've asked for from CPC.
Thank you very much.
I have a question. The will the method ultimately chosen and hopefully carried out for cleaning up the pond affect how the restoration of the fountain is done? In other words, might it have to be done a different way with different composition of paints or anything like that? Do you know?
No, to my knowledge, there would be no impact on the estimates and the proposals that we've gotten for restoring the fountain. We'd use the same methods.
Thank you. Any other questions for Lise?
Well, I thought that there would have been some differences to the restoration of the fountain, depending on what was done with the water quality. Do we know when we're going to be able to get a definitive answer on how to clean up the water and how much it will cost?
Well, it's a process. I believe that we could, through public process and working with our design engineer, accomplish that process over the winter, this winter, and go out to bid in the spring.
Mm-hmm. And
But I don't have any further details about what would be different about the restoration of the fountain. I'm not sure
yeah,
what
speak?
you're.
Can I speak to that?
Yep.
Chuck Griffin here. First of all, the fountain, it cannot be removed. The price that we have, as it was bid, does not include using a crane. It includes backing up to the fountain and using equipment to load it onto a flatbed. So the fountain, to try to remove that without lowering the water and waiting until the muck dries out some, is really not practical. The crane cost would be excessive. Two, there is no difference. We're getting the best quality finish and some repair on the iron is in the number. And then it's cleaned and then repaired and then many coats of this four-step process. And correction of an earlier statement, the inside surfaces are all prepped the same way. They're cleaned and prepped, and that was a big problem with the fountain at the last repair work. And so this whole thing comes out being like a piece of glass almost at the end of the day. I think you would not want to run dirty water that we have now through that fountain, because you just create again another thick layer of muck. And that's this is a real problem. I think you'd be better off to leave it alone until such time as you have the wells operating, a shallow well that can provide water, not city water per se, but shallow well water. Does that help in any way?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. But it sounds to me that we should be waiting on what the final solution is going to be for cleaning up the pond, the water. What it's going to cost. Is there enough funding available for it? And then restart this whole process.
Well,
excuse me.
Go ahead, Lise.
So the funding that we're asking CPC for right now, not for the fountain restoration, but for the other grant funding, we intend to use at least some of that for this design engineering that will help us decide what approach to take and how much it will cost.
Right.
And I think if, based upon the study if they come back with a markedly different in substance plan to clean up the pond, we'd need to hear from Lee's again on an additional scope. Using the appropriated money that hasn't been spent yet, pending the adoption of a plan. But if the plan's a lot different, then she'd need to come back and see us, and we can give it further blessing.
Yeah, that's what I've been thinking. It's one of these where if we're really lucky, everything will go nice and smooth. But there's it sounds like there's just too much room for error or what ifs.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, there's a lot of moving parts to this one, that's for sure.
Yeah. I mean, I think I would feel more comfortable if we had some wording in there that, yes, they can certainly spend this money for the consultants and the studies and whatever to get to the point we want to get, but then kind of hold it there until we find out that everything is still reachable and doable. And
yeah, I think that where we are with that application at the moment, and it has received approval from the city council, is the amounts that we recommended have been approved, with the description of how it would be used in there, in terms of the timing and sequencing of the spending. Obviously, the planning gets on the front end, and that's going to be spent. But in terms of the undertaking of the plan, I think that can be done under the present approval, subject to the good judgment of the city employees who are overseeing the work.
right. Yeah.
So that's where we are.
One last thing, please remember that the fountain is very much a critical path item, because once we start lowering the water and do what we do there, we're going to want to move on that quickly. And we know that this fountain work takes weeks to do. So if you didn't have the money appropriated and have it clear how it was going to happen, we'd be in real trouble, because we don't want to refill the pond until we can reset the fountain, the repaired fountain.
I'd like either Chuck or Lee's weigh in on confirming my assumption that the fountain and the statuary needs the work in order to preserve itself. And whether or not it ends up, sitting on a sandbox,
Yes, it is badly deteriorated, needs the work, no question.
I agree. Absolutely. The fountain needs to be restored regardless.
Any other questions or comments for Lee's? Okay, thanks, Lee's. We'll let you go.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to item number 5 on the agenda, the items number 5 on the agenda for our general business. Number 5A, committee elections for chair and vice chair. I'd like to postpone that for our next meeting and put that aside. So we'll move on to 5B. We've got a draft 2023 application and submission process. And I spoke earlier in the day with Caitlin about this and how we're trying to move to a electronic submission consistent with the way much of the applications for licenses, et cetera, and zoning permits are being put entirely by electronic means. Caitlin, could you explain the process and what it will look like for this maiden year that we're going to try to put it in play?
Yep, how you explained it, is exactly right. And I provided you all with some screenshots moving you along, I guess, the applicant experience of submitting for their grant. The application and the fields, I guess the steps 1 through 12 really mirror the current application. And so the applicant would be applying on the community preservation site, and they would just be filling in their information as they kind of would, in past years, with the summary, what the public benefits are, the timeline, and then they're able to submit attachments, like they would in previous years. You're able to view these applications online like you have been in the past. And then we could also print out hard copies for anyone that would like that.
Any questions for Caitlin on that, on the way that what this process is going to look like? When we talked earlier today, I questioned whether those of us who like the paper can still get copies, hard copies, and that will be attended to, but you'll need to ask for them. So, any other questions? Okay, you have also in your package the draft FY23 budget. And these are preliminary numbers. You can see the basis that was used in putting it together. These will be updated before our February meeting in order to get a more recent look at what we'll be looking at in terms of funds potential to be potentially appropriated. What looks to be like positive news is there's more potentially available for FY23 than we had in 22. So that's always good news.
Yeah.
Any
questions about the estimated budget?
Mike, this is Don Walters. 2 questions on the 2 top line revenues. With respect to the 23 local surcharge revenue, i.e. our taxes, what's the date that we get to know that? Or perhaps if you took a look at a graph of time versus percentage of likelihood of achieving that number, when do we get this with a confidence level? Like right now, we're 95% confident or whatever, and come end of December, we're 99%. How does that work in? Similarly, my assumption is the state match is a bit more nebulous than the local revenue piece.
The local surcharge revenue, I think it gets more accurate as you follow the due dates for the quarterly payments of the taxes, and as the tax payments come in, a portion of it is the surcharge, and it gets funneled over into the fund. So when after taxes are due and you've just got the unpaid ones out there, I think you're probably 95% good on the number. The actual final number and the one that's then reported to the state for the most recently ending fiscal year is after the year closes. So after June 30.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions about the budget? Okay. Right. We also have in the package the list of open grants and statuses. And this was the subject of the discussion earlier today in terms of how to make it less administratively taxing in chasing annually requests from applicants who still haven't spent all their money or even started their spending the money to ask for rollovers and continuations of their grant. So we kicked around some ideas, but what we're trying to get to is number one, an idea of whether the 12 months that we put in place a few years ago that said, okay, every 12 months you've got to ask for more time, whether that's unreasonable, especially with larger projects, more complicated funding projects where they have to look for significant funds elsewhere, and we're the first dollar in. And projects that are going to require preservation restrictions or conservation restrictions, which we now know can be 2 years in the making before any of the money goes out the door. One thing that needs to be considered is whether that 12 months is not reasonable. The coalition advice is that is unreasonable, and that a more reasonable number would be 24 months before people need to come back. The second part of this is to, especially on the older ones that are still out there, is to set up an automated system that gives them an alert every November, let's say, and says, you need to ask for an extension, and if we don't hear from you by February, we're going to vote to return those funds to the general fund. So that's another possibility of trying to streamline this so that there isn't as much paper handling and administrative time involved every year. Any questions or comments about that?
Those sound good to me.
Okay.
Me too.
Part of the
Don Little, I do have a couple comments. I would pretty much agree. I think the initial application, I think 2 years is good rather than one, because projects take a while. But I think after that, it's still, if it's beyond the 2 years, I think we need to ask every year, not keep that every 2 years. And then you made a comment, I don't know if this was technically how it worked, but you said if we don't hear from them, it would rescind it. I think what it should be is I think we need to hear from them, because sometimes you send an email to somebody and they change email addresses or something. We need to hear that they still need it, or I don't like that, if we don't hear from them. That's all.
You don't like the automatic default, huh? Okay. Yeah, that's understandable, and I think we'll try to work that into the mix, but at least maybe reduce the number of touches that any application gets on renewals. The time when we will formally address, for instance, uniform conditions, and for example, changing the automatic 12 months to the automatic 24 months at the initial appropriation, would be when we put the docket together and vote on our recommendations next year, and then adjust the conditions as we might vote, and then alert City Council that those changes have been made in case they miss it. And I say that because on a few occasions in the last 2 years, city councilors, when they're discussing applications, are not happy with the ability to roll it forward year by year by year, and they want to impose hard deadlines on some applications. We wouldn't necessarily be avoiding that, but it is a conversation that needs to be very visible. If we're changing our ground rules, we need to make it visible to them, because that'll affect their own attitudes about how liberal or not we are with the amount of time that a grant stays out there and is unused. So, okay. Do you have something else? No?
I'm all set.
Okay, good. Andy, I see we have you here, and just to review, we did address both the revised application on the tennis courts, and voted to recommend the approval of the revised application for the tennis courts. On a separate vote, we voted to add the bond payment for Fuller Field. We voted to recommend that bond payment be made in the next fiscal year at the same as the other bond payments that were already approved. I don't know what else besides those two votes you might need.
No, thank you, Chair, for the update. Thank you kindly for that. I appreciate it. I was at another meeting and I couldn't get here until now. But thank you. I see that you completed those items. And I think your discussion just now was great relative to the extensions with applicants who need funds for a longer period of time. And all of that, I think we're on the same page about it. I think Diane and Caitlin have done a good job of lining up for online applications and making that a little bit more seamless, more accessible to you 24/7 and all that. It's where we're going with as much as we can. So I think that's a great setup. I'm glad you reviewed that as well, but I'm happy to speak to anything that you might be concerned about if there's anything.
I know that in the package we have, there was a new order that was drafted to go over to City Council that basically to accomplish and get in front of them for vote the tennis court revised application and to get the Fuller Field bond payment approved. But it was put in the total verbiage and total in with all the other items that were already reviewed and approved by City Council. And I'm very concerned that there not be confusion, that what we're asking them to do is not to revisit their prior discussions and votes on anything that they've already approved.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. That's a great point. Caitlin and I can definitely follow up tomorrow morning with Rich Jones, the city clerk, and make sure that there's no misunderstanding about what should be in the packet, what is the committee's recommendation and the draft order that's being provided here, and anything along those lines that's been referenced in the council packet or will be at an upcoming meeting. Because as you point out, that we're not talking at all here about the prior projects. We're only talking about these singular unresolved issues.
Right, and I know there was some time sensitivity on making sure that we recommended that bond payment to get it to them so it could get in line with the other payments. So, okay.
Yeah, that's correct. I believe the timeline was such that we wanted to get your recommendation into the council packet. Councilor Tonter has agreed to sponsor, as is typical, for this upcoming meeting, at which point it would be referred as typical to the council's budget and finance committee, at which point it would be referred back to the regular council, presumably for approvals.
And we'll make sure everybody in those steps knows that we're only asking them to do two things. Okay. Good. Thank you. All right. Note in the status report that the reporting obligations we have to the state, that the CP3 forms that need to be filled out have been done in a timely manner and filed, I believe it's in September. That's when that happens every year. Thank you, Caitlin, for that. Next item is the packet included the minutes of the 5/26 meeting. And I will entertain a motion to approve.
Michael, a quick question. This is Glenn here. There was a very minor typo. It just happened to be in a comment that I happened to make. And then when it's, so what's the easiest, best way to handle that? It was really
If you
minor.
have it right in front of you, just tell us what it is, and we'll vote to approve as corrected.
Okay, I won't, it's almost embarrassing. It's so minor, but anyway, it was on page 7, the number 11 in the discussion of the tennis court, where it says there court sized should just be court size, regulation court size, SIZE, not sized. That's all, very minor.
Good catch. Okay, Caitlin, you have that correction?
I do. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, is there a second to that? I don't have the motion yet. Motion to approve?
Yeah, I'll
Motion to
be
approve
happy to
as
make that
amended.
since, oh, okay, I'll second it then.
Okay, we got a motion to approve and seconded as corrected. Any discussion? Okay, roll call. Tom O'Brien,
Yes,
you have your hand raised. Do you want to make a comment on the minutes?
yes, I noticed in the minutes in the discussion of Atwood Park, which I voted against that. It says it's Bartlett Park, not Atwood Park, so I like that correction to be made. In the minutes to
Okay.
call it Bartlett Park.
Okay. So correction for the name of Atwood Park as well.
Yeah.
So I think we can consider the motion to approve and second to include both those corrections. Any other questions or comments? Okay, then roll call vote. Tom O'Brien,
Yes,
Chuck Griffin,
Yes.
Paul Healy,
Yes,
Tom Little,
Yes,
Sorry, you cut out there. Who was that?
I was asking Jane for a vote.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Don Waters.
Yes.
Okay, Glenn Richards,
Yes.
and chair votes yes. Thank you. Okay, it's miscellaneous. I just want to put it out there as a an ongoing thing that we will be discussing, and it's to make efforts to offer meetings with or suggest resources for existing and new city councilors as well as committee members for information, detailed information about the terms of the Community Preservation Act and how it works and what the ordinance says in Newburyport and how our processes work in conjunction with city council. And hopefully that will ease some misunderstandings that have happened occasionally when our recommendations get to city council. But it's at the moment, Caitlin and Jane are going to work up a CPA 101 cheat sheet that we will provide to everyone and then make the offer for additional talks and explanations. And also hopefully we'll have city councilors wanting to attend our meetings when there are projects that are affecting their wards or that they're interested in generally to hear the presentations and ask questions. So that's just that's on our behind the scenes administrative improvements list. So is there anybody, does anybody have any other new business for us? Okay, then I will myself move to adjourn and thank everyone. Is there a second?
I'll second it. Chuck Griffin,
Yes, Chuck.
I second it.
Thank you. Okay, I don't think we need a voice vote. I mean, I don't think we need a roll call. Let's just have a voice vote. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Yes.
Yes,
Thanks, everybody. We will likely not be seeing each other until February, but we're keeping those standard dates available, regular dates available in case we need to call a meeting. And by the way, thank you all for adjusting your October schedule to move it up this time so we could get that bond payment in the works. Okay, good night, everyone.
Good night.
Good night.
Aye.
Michael,
Night, thank you.
bye-bye.
Bye.